Davis, and I'm very thankful you could make tonight's workshop with the Plan Commission and the City Advisory Parks Board. We set up this room a little bigger than City Hall because we were expecting a good-sized crowd, and everybody has an opportunity to look at all the posters that we have around the room regarding the concept plans. Perhaps we could do some introductions quickly with the people in attendance here. The Advisory Parks Board, I think they kind of selected this side of the room. Maybe you guys could just identify yourselves so we know who the Parks Board members are.
Amy Davis.
Terry Woolner, Chairman.
Todd Kaufman.
Bill Gogolewski.
Megan Schisler.
Bill Miller.
Ray Muller, Parks Director.
Thank you. And the Plan Commission, almost the exact same team on the other side. Maybe Kathy?
Kathy Prop.
John Kiefer. Michael Ford.
Tom Foytek.
John Hens.
Jeff Tomes.
David Borsick.
All right. I also have some compadres in the crowd. I'm Alan Davis, Community Development Director. I believe Kelly Nyforth is back there waving her hand, and Mr. Lyons from the Planning Department is also here. And we have some guests from Houseel Levine Associates. They're helping the city put together the concept plans. We have Nick Davis and Devin Levine from the title of the company. So one of the principals. All right, the agenda, you should have all had an agenda in front of you tonight. We're looking at a presentation by city staff and Houseel and Levine. Then we'll be looking at questions and answers from the Advisory Parks Board and Plan Commission on concept plans, some discussion on the potential disposition of a portion of Lakeshore Municipal Golf Course, and we plan on opening this workshop up to public input, and we'll be providing a microphone so everybody can hear everybody's questions and answers. We also have some comment cards for people who are more comfortable leaving their comments written, and you'll be able to leave those with staff before you leave tonight. Are there any questions up to this point? Yes, Mr. Tomes.
You might want to go over that we're having another opportunity to have a meeting, tomorrow, and then I think you plan on
Absolutely.
5 more.
The question was more public input, and I could highlight number one, the city website has the concept plans up on the city's website, as well as comment forums. We'll have an open house tomorrow night right here in the same room if people would like to contribute more comments at that point. And then the City Council will have a presentation on October 10th regarding the same concept plans, and there'll be an opportunity for public input at that point. Thank you. All right. We'll see if I can advance my slides. I have a short PowerPoint presentation to give you a little idea of what we're talking about tonight. Probably number one is the economic development opportunity that we have in front of us. Economic development is a very competitive process. It's almost a competitive match, global, nationally, regionally. We've been through this several times in the city of Oshkosh when it comes to economic development projects. It's always the question is, does Oshkosh respond and submit a proposal for our economic development projects? In this particular case, we have the opportunity to submit a proposal to Oshkosh Corporation to sell a portion of Lakeshore Municipal Golf Course for their corporate headquarters. And if we do sell a portion of the golf course, people have asked, what do we do with the balance of the land? So I'm expecting that we're going to need to answer all those questions by the end of October. I'll give you some insight into the economic development process and what led us to the meeting tonight. Greater Oshkosh Economic Development Corporation, who is our private-public partnership that works on behalf of many municipalities and businesses throughout Oshkosh. They do retention calls to all our businesses, and one retention calls over the winter indicated that Oshkosh Corporation will be beginning a site search for their corporate headquarters. The City and Greater Oshkosh Economic Development Corporation then identified possible sites this last spring. The city performed a wetland delineation and title search on the golf course in spring to determine the viability of the golf course as a possible site. The city then provided 19 possible sites to the Greater Oshkosh Economic Development Corporation for consideration. And that was done early this summer. And unfortunately, we received no follow-up questions from anyone regarding any of those sites. So that brought into the questions, does Oshkosh actually have a site on Oshkosh Corporation's shortlist for selection of a corporate headquarters? City Manager Roloff wrote a letter to Oshkosh Corporation at the end of August supporting their growth in the city and suggesting Lakeshore as a possible site for a corporate headquarters. That was our reach out to make sure that they at least knew that we still were interested in their corporate headquarters. Fortunately, Oshkosh Corporation responded within a week and asked permission to perform soil borings on site on the golf course, and they completed those in mid-September. Their site consultant, CBRE, that's the abbreviation, invited the City of Oshkosh to submit a non-binding proposal for a portion of the golf course by October 31st, 2017. So the ball's kind of in our lap right now as to what do we submit to Oshkosh Corporation regarding their corporate headquarters. And if we do not respond, that would basically take us out of the running for the corporate headquarters. Any questions on that particular side? There's a lot of information there.
Yeah,
Yes.
you said it takes us out of the loop for the headquarters. Aren't they drilling around here anywhere else?
That you would have to follow up with Oshkosh Corporation. They are drilling on
We were
Lakeshore
told they're
Municipal Golf
drilling
Course.
like 4 other places. One's just outside of Oshkosh, but the only place that you know of is the golf course.
Correct. They signed an access agreement, so we know it's Oshkosh Corporation for that. Yes,
Now,
sir.
why was the golf course even selected? Why was a park even selected? And that's what the golf course is.
I actually have a slide on the next one. I'll show you all the 19 sites that we have, and I'll include that.
But I'm back to the question, why a park? Because if you people are familiar with what this book is, you know what this is?
The
Comprehensive
plan.
Outdoor Recreation Plan that was signed off by, let's see, a number of people. First on the list was Burke Tower, Steve Herman, Ray Mauer, Bill Sturm, Chad Dahlman, Steve Dobish, who was the general manager, of course, Steve Ziblet, city council members, Steve Cummings, Thomas Peck, who were there, Terry Wooler, myself, and Bill Miller. And we adopted this and had a mission statement in there, City of Oshkosh mission statement. The City of Oshkosh seeks to provide a park and recreation system that will meet the needs of our current residents and future generations, preserve and protect the city's open space, water, historical, and natural resources, and provide a park and recreation program that is designed to enhance the city's quality of life. Selling a park doesn't meet our mission statement, and Mr. Roloff's name is in this thing too. And on the bottom here of that page is Lakeshore Golf Course. What part of this don't I understand?
Yeah, Al, could I ask that, let him finish his presentation before we start editorializing?
Okay,
Thank you.
I just want to know how it got for sale, the
Well,
park.
hopefully that'll come out as he presents.
Yes, the slide that I have up on the screen right now shows the 19 different sites that the city identified for a possible location for the corporate headquarters. And you can see in the downtown, on the north side, the west side, and the south side. We didn't have any search criteria at that point in time. We were looking at different sites. So you can see the Kmart site is up there, the Aviation Plaza. Downtown, we had the Sawdust District. We had Pioneer Island. The Morgan District was included. On the north side, just about every quadrant of every location of the interchanges along 41 are listed there. So you can see there's a location about every interchange and up and down I-41. And the park location specifically was included because it met the criteria we thought they'd be looking for when it comes to visibility, access, and size when it comes to a site. And that was pure speculation on our part based on what we'd think a corporate headquarters would be looking for. And I will include this on the city's website for tomorrow. So once we sent the 19 sites, we didn't hear anything. Mr. Roloff exchanged some correspondence with Oshkosh Corporation. They actually got back to us. CBRE, the site selection firm, did contact the city regarding the Lakeshore Municipal Golf Course. They started inquiring about the physical conditions, the streets, the utilities, and other improvements that would need to be supplied, their land uses in the neighborhood, a timeline for a response and implementation, and any financial incentives. So it's the typical economic development process where they seek information and we supply that information. Some of the criteria we believe is part of the Oshkosh Corporation site search criteria, and that's provided by the Greater Oshkosh EDC. That's the private-public partnership on economic development. Number one is a wow location, a world-class location for a corporate headquarters of a global magnitude. Number two is urgency. They're on a very tight time frame. Sometimes that plays exactly into a site selector's game in that if you cannot respond, you've selected yourself out and they can narrow their search quicker. Workforce base, retention and attraction. It's very important to retain their existing employees and attract future employees. They've identified that within their organization. They're looking for a welcoming community, both for the business and all their employees, current and future. And it needs to make financial sense because, after all, they report to their stockholders. And in conclusion, Lakeshore Municipal Golf Course is the only site that meets all those site criteria in the city of Oshkosh. And when it comes to economic development, what is at stake? Oshkosh Corporation's global headquarters, about 450 current jobs to be retained, about 200 jobs to be created, 30 plus acres, 150,000 give or take square feet of Class A office space, which is the highest class of office space you can get. People have talked about a community-wide impact, both public and private giving, and it's a very competitive environment. In my opinion, this is a once-in-a-generation opportunity, not only for Oshkosh, but every other economic development group that would be seeking a corporate headquarters of this magnitude. We attempted to do a economic impact of Oshkosh Corporation and building their corporate headquarters in Oshkosh. Those additional 200 jobs would be 200 direct jobs, and based on the economic models that we have in the region, that would add another 64 indirect jobs and increase earnings in the city of Oshkosh by about $26 million. And the corporate offices, the managing offices, have a very high average annual pay. And then on the downside, the economic impact if Oshkosh Corporation chose to build their corporate headquarters elsewhere, those 450 jobs would translate to a loss of almost 600 in the city of Oshkosh, because there's direct jobs and indirect jobs again. Winnebago County, as you can see, the 4-county region, and the state of Wisconsin. And we're looking for a timeline to respond by October 31st to 2017. As I mentioned, the public information began with the city website on front page of Hot Topics, where we'll see the concept plans and comments. Any website, any comments for the concept plans on the website are available. We'll have the workshop tonight. There's an open house in this room again tomorrow night. And then the City Council will be discussing this at their October 10th and October 24th council meetings. And then the proposal is due October 31st of 2017. And then implementation could occur between November and May of 2018 to stay on schedule. And in preparation of submitting a proposal, staff has worked with Halcyon Levine to create concept plans that kind of run the gamut from low development, low intense development to higher intensity development. They both include a corporate campus for Oshkosh Corporation. This is something that we would submit as part of the proposal to Oshkosh Corporation. They needed to include public space, accessibility to Oshkosh and Interstate 41, Riverwalk connections, both to Rainbow Park, the Tribal Heritage Trail, and the neighborhoods. As I mentioned, the range of private development from no private development other than along the privately owned property on Oshkosh Ave to more business park or retail development in the vicinity of Oshkosh Corporation. And the public recreational amenities range from just trails and a Lakeshore riverfront riverwalk to ball fields and soccer fields, and could be a lot of different things. And based on what we needed to supply to Oshkosh Corporation for this concept plan, both for the community and Oshkosh Corporation, we retained Houseo and Levine to help us put that concept. They're the people who have helped the city on the Central City Investment Strategy, and they put together the Sawdust District proposal to the Milwaukee Bucks on our behalf last year. Okay, does anybody have any questions of me at this point before I turn it over to Houseo and Levine to talk about the concepts? Okay, I'll turn it over to Nick Davis.
Oh, perfect. Can everybody hear me in the back? Yes, thank you. So what we're going to do is go through the 3 concept plans, but first, before we do that, I just want to introduce myself. My name is Nick Davis. I'm a principal at Houseo Levine Associates. With me is Devin Levine, founder or co-founder and principal at Houseo Levine. We've worked, as Alan had said, on a couple of different projects here in Oshkosh. We've done several types of projects similar to this: conceptual designs, massing models, preliminary plans, just to give a sense of visualizing a space, what something could be. We've done quite a bit of research in terms of existing plans that were done in the past, which we'll talk about a little bit. Some of the plans that were done in the past, we've done some reconnaissance on site, we've talked to staff, we've talked to CBRE. We really tried to learn as much as we can in this short time frame about what some of the challenges are, what some of the opportunities are on this site. So what we want to do today is go through 2 concept plans, 2 2D site plans, and then a 3D rendering. So the first concept plan number 1 is really driving towards trying to maximize the open space opportunities that can exist. So trying to bring in as many different open spaces, trails, that areas where people would be able to actively go out into the space. You'd have more riverfront access, but also trying to find a place for the Oshkosh Corporation's campus. A lot of the things that we addressed in this plan were, preserving as much of the woodlands as we can, preserving the views, taking into consideration access into these sites, what types of uses would be conducive to, a new corporate campus coming into this area, how would this tie into the Rainbow Park master plan that was done, and really starting to bring this all together, stitch it all together as one conceptual plan. So I'm just going to bounce around. These are the same graphics that are on the boards around behind all of us. So if you want to kind of come in and get more detail, feel free to take a look at any one of the boards. But for number 1, one of the things that we wanted to do is kind of maximize that view, that opportunity from Interstate 41. So if you're coming southbound or even traveling northbound, if you're able to look across the waterway, you'd be able to see this campus. Not only the campus, but also the park, the open space. You'd see the riverfront, more activity along this way. That was something that we really wanted to capitalize in both of these concepts. You can also see number 3, so what's that kind of salmon color or light brick red, is that waterfront trail. So expanding that trail, connecting to the existing one that's adjacent to Interstate 41 right now, and bringing that around the parkway to connect to the Rainbow Park. But that would also kind of have an opportunity to move its way through this open space as everything is starting to be redesigned. So you'll see some of these trails kind of cutting through throughout the plan, and that's an opportunity that you could capitalize on with this overall redevelopment. So this just shows some of those opportunities, what those pathways would look like, taking advantage of the water bodies that are there, but also some of the new uses that might be coming in. So number 4 is an example of a restaurant or a retail space, probably a restaurant, that could service both the campus but also those that are going to be coming to the open space, to the park area. And it's just a chance to provide a setting for a restaurant or some type of use that could maximize what these views might be, looking back at the water and the overall traffic that will be coming to this area. It's going to be increasing. So the yellow line defines the boundary that we know Oshkosh Corporation is looking to achieve. They're looking for roughly 29 acres. They also are looking for room to expand in the future. So that's what this yellow line, and you'll see this sort of as a theme throughout all the different concepts, is a driving force. We're trying to make sure that we include that space, that it meets what we know to be their standards and what they're looking for in terms of the criteria for the plans. But it also helps you to get a sense of the overall space that you have to work with in terms of these other programmable items. So what you see here in the orange, number 7, that's the building footprint. It can change a little bit, obviously. These are very conceptual. We're just trying to give everybody a sense of what's possible here. So tonight as we go through this, it's more about program than anything else. We wanted to show all the different components or elements that could make up what these overall illustrative plans are able to achieve. So the orange is the Oshkosh Corporation's footprint, the building footprint. That same in color would be plaza spaces, public spaces for them and their employees to enjoy some outdoor seating, some opportunities for public art and display, things that we know that they want to have on their site. And then also number 8 shows some of the parking lot spaces that they're going to need for their employees, those that are going to be coming to Oshkosh Corporation to visit. And then number 6 shows areas where we're trying to preserve the tree lines that exist there, so those canopy trees. To the best that we could, we really tried throughout this site plan to preserve what we could from those woodland areas, from existing vegetation, and again, some of those views. Number 9, there'd be some opportunities for, if it's fishing piers or boat docks, those types of things, something that could build off of that northern portion of the site and give people an additional amenity, an additional access point to the waterfront. You can also see a big open space that would be in between this Rainbow Park master plan or the Rainbow Park area and also the Oshkosh Corporation. Just a nice field, something that would give an opportunity for a variety of different uses or a variety of different activities, and it would serve as kind of a bridge between those two uses as they start to develop over time. Number 11 is what the Rainbow Park Master Plan has identified as some of their potential build-outs, so what they're trying to achieve. You have elements such as playgrounds, a splash pad, some pickleball courts, I believe. There's also some trail connections that tie into what will eventually be this very extensive riverfront path that could go along this waterway. There's also some amenities for like lookouts, seating, scenic overlooks, those types of things. One of the things that we wanted to make sure that we were aware of is that there is a residential neighborhood that's sort of to what'll be the southeast of this new project or this new opportunity, and we want to make sure that we maintain a buffer between those uses, that there be a tree canopy, that there be some vegetation that separates them, but we also want to give that neighborhood access to these parks and open space, so providing trailheads and access points onto this expansive trail system that's being proposed. We're also making sure that the Mary Joel Park is retained, has better access to it, you'd have better parking to it. There's also some existing properties that would remain within this site plan, but there's some proposed ones. So number 16 shows an example, and number 15 shows a trail connection that would connect to the neighborhoods to the south as well. But number 16 shows some of the proposed uses that we know are coming in. So I think throughout this, number 16 and number 18, 19 and 20, these are uses that are currently being recommended right now or under a proposal. So this would include a hotel site, there would be some commercial or retail opportunities, a gas station. So a lot of the uses that, as we were discussing this back and forth with Oshkosh Corporation, things that they're interested in seeing in this area. So those are the types of uses that their employees would be looking for. So that's a great opportunity to, as over time you get to redevelop these spots, that's something that they're hoping happens over the next couple of years. We do recommend extending Kohler Street north and kind of cutting through the site. It's kind of hard to see in this graphic, but If you look on the map, it does give an opportunity coming off of the roundabout to connect up into the site, into their corporate campus. It would provide a nice opportunity for kind of a visual cue as you're queuing up to come to their main drop-off for the corporation. But it also helps with some of the access issues that might be occurring for some of the existing uses, but also future uses. So alleviating some of those challenges and opening up opportunities for easier access points. Number 21 just shows, and this is something we've kind of recommended throughout the site, some opportunities for if it's trailhead parking or just parking for the open space in general, just little areas where you're able to, provide enough spaces where people have direct access to these new amenities. Number 22 is a recommended retail or commercial use, something that could capitalize on the visibility from US 41, but also from Oshkosh Avenue. And with the new access that's going to be improved, with some of the overall improvements that we're recommending on this, there's an opportunity to kind of build up this little commercial node in this area off of the existing restaurant that's directly to the west and some of the new uses that are coming in potentially. Let me go back. One of the things too, you can kind of see this dashed line, that light darkened line that goes around, that's the existing footprint of the golf course now. So when you're looking at the maps, you can kind of see that dashed line represents what the golf course footprint is and what this other space is that's out there to be programmed. So where we're really identifying new uses and where other uses might be being improved. All right, so that's concept number 1. I'm going to move through concept number 2 just a little quicker because there are some similarities. The main difference between concept plan number 1 and concept plan number 2 is where we were trying to maximize opportunities for open space and park areas and trail systems, things like that. It's not that that's not incorporated in this concept. This one's a little more built out, so there's more opportunities shown on here for future uses, a small scale business park that could support or build off of some of the opportunities that would come from the Oshkosh Corporation. So what we did do is, and you'll see this on the boards over here, the 3D model represents concept number 1 and what those opportunities are. We do not have a 3D model for concept number 2. This concept is meant more to just show what some of that, a more aggressive or a more, I guess, expansive opportunity for the types of uses you may want to see if you wanted to capitalize on Oshkosh Corporation coming in. So we'll kind of go through this. Same thing. It has, we're trying to capitalize on the views of the Oshkosh Corporation from Interstate 41. The open space and trail system that's between the waterfront and what this new business park is still very expansive. You're looking at over 300 feet. There's a lot of opportunity to have some nice open space, maintaining the tree lines that exist now. The waterfront trail can tie into what would be like pedways or bikeways throughout the overall concept or the overall area. The Oshkosh Corporation's footprint is very similar to what it was on the previous concept. We do show here that there's an opportunity for some proposed ball fields, so something that's a little bit more programmed. The space could be activated with, if it's a baseball field or soccer field, whatever kinds of uses. It just gives you a sense of scale of what that space could accommodate. Again, this is just including the Rainbow Park Master Plan, nothing significantly different from the previous version. Where it starts to get a little different is really moving from here on. Mary Jewel Park still has its existing footprint. We're still trying to connect that trail system to the residential neighborhoods to the south. But as we start to move a little further west, there's going to be a buffer between the woodlands, between the trails and Oshkosh Corp to the north, and there will be some woodlands that would be preserved that we weren't able to preserve in the previous version, but also these new uses, you can start to see what this build out could look like. So it would be a little bit more in terms of retail space, service space, could be an opportunity for office. It's a looped drive. There is a number 19 shows like a plaza space or courtyard space that could build off of that loop drive. We could also have some stormwater management built into these retention ponds, more centralized. We're trying to preserve as many of the existing uses that we know want to exist over time, but also showing what some of the potential spaces could redevelop into. So this would still include the hotel space that's being recommended. It would require reconfiguration of the retail and service spaces that are currently being recommended. But overall, the program could accommodate some of the current uses that are coming in and also really take on a different level of development too. So for this concept, similar amount of trail systems incorporated into it, just a reconfiguration, kind of redesigned it a little bit. Still able to maintain quite a bit of the woodlands, but the previous concept does preserve more woodland space, existing canopy, and does provide more open space opportunities. So this is the 3D visualization of concept number 1. So I know we're kind of doing this out of order. But for concept number 1, we're going to kind of work from the far east side of the site and start working our way over to the west side, over to Interstate 41. This just shows what some of those connections would look like, what the improved parking lot would look like as part of the Rainbow Park Master Plan. Boat dock launches, scenic overlooks, plaza spaces, improvements to some of the shelters. You'd also have an opportunity for some ball courts, so I think we said like pickleball or basketball. There's also an opportunity for some shelters to the, I guess it would be to the north. The orientation is opposite here, so I apologize. And then also the baseball field. Number 4, I'm going to go back. Number 4 just shows an opportunity to ensure that if there is going to be stormwater management, or if there is going to be water management efforts on site, that none of the impacts from these proposed improvements impact the surrounding neighborhoods. So we're just building in a stormwater system or stormwater management system that, one, aesthetically looks very nice and is pleasing, but also accommodates that potential water runoff. Just showing you kind of a perspective view of how these trails are going to connect, how they'll run along the waterfront, what these docks might look like, where they would be located. So you can imagine that these would be for fishermen, but also those that are walking, just want a view of the water. Also be boat launches or boat dock and that kind of thing. One thing to keep in mind, so with this riverfront trail, we're picturing the riverfront trail could be somewhere between 12 to 15 feet wide, something that's very similar to the trail that's running along Interstate 41 right now. Some of these trails that start to go back into the site would be of smaller scale. They might even be granite, and those kinds of materials and those kinds of details would be worked out in future phases. But you can imagine that this riverfront trail would be a very dramatic view as you're coming around the point. So there is a real opportunity to capitalize on just that overall view. I'm sure many of you have been out that way and seen what it looks like. It is very impressive. It's something that we took into consideration as we started developing these plans. Again, that yellow line is the overall footprint for what Oshkosh Corporation is looking to pick up when they're doing all these site criteria searches. The number 11 is where that building is footprint is. It's a 4-story building. They gave us some of their basic criteria for what they want their building to achieve. It's a 4-story building. It's roughly 160,000 square feet. They gave us some of their parking. So this concept, about as closely as we can, not knowing exactly what their architecture is going to look like, represents the amount of parking they're going to need, where that parking is most likely going to be located, what that scale of the building might look like. The number 14 preserves woodlands to the best that we can. There's also an opportunity that if in the future, those aren't existing woodlands. But if in the future they do want to expand into this area, that's where they could possibly expand. It also gives an opportunity for, if another development in the future wanted to be there, they could also have that. You just get a sense for the trails and how they're cutting through this site. There's pedestrian bridges over some of the waterways. We're trying to connect to all the different nodes that are coming into this area. So the different roadways, the different sidewalks that are going to be a part of those roadways, but then also being able to break out into these spaces and really take advantage of some of the existing vegetation that's there, the existing open space, and also some of the improvements that are going to be made based on this plan. Number 9 just shows where a potential trailhead can be located, how residents are able to access into the site. So 9 and 10 are both an example of where those would occur. But you could expect that as this plan was being modified over time, there's more opportunities for pedestrians to have direct access into these spaces. Number 15, 16, and 19 are just examples of the types of uses that are being recommended or that are being proposed right now for these spaces. So, as redevelopment starts to occur, you'd want to make sure that it's in line with what we're recommending for this overall area, this overall plan. and really taking advantage of some of those infrastructure improvements or site improvements that can occur. Number 18, 22, and 23 just show that transition from what would be that more developed edge into the open space. So preserving green space where we can, trying to maximize some of that vegetation, but then also giving those trail connections that'll get you up to the waterfront, and then connecting to existing and proposed uses in the future. And then number 21 and 22 just show like the overall scale and scope of how much open space could be utilized from the space that's there now, knowing that Oshkosh Corp has a footprint already set aside. This is the amount of area that you have that remains that you can really take advantage of and create a public space that would be very exciting, a lot of activities that could be proposed here, but right now it's really looked at as like an open space, trying to preserve what's there and trying to take advantage of some of the other opportunities like waterfront access, trail access, and just overall open space. And this was just to show that view, that connection to the existing trail now, and how that would move along the waterfront in the future to connect you all the way down to Rainbow Park. And so that just gives you an overall view of the model, what we're trying to talk about here tonight. So I think with that, I'm going to hand it back over to Alan.
Thank you.
Yep.
All right. This is the time I'd invite the Plan Commission and the Advisory Parks Board to give staff feedback on the draft concept plans that we can possibly prepare for submission at the end of October. Yes, Mr. Tomes.
Identify how much total acreage there is now on its existing use.
We can't hear you, Jeff.
Can you identify how many total acreage there is now in existing use, and how much will there be under Plan 1 or Plan 2 of open space remaining?
The number of acres?
Yeah, and so these are rough calculations, but overall, the site that we looked to improve or provided these recommendations for was about 100 acres, and we know that Oshkosh Corporation is looking for 29 acres for their initial site and 6 acres for their expansion. So, I mean, you're still looking at a substantial amount of space for open space.
So
Does that answer your
approximately
question?
70 to 74 of remainder.
Oh, so it'd be,
Out of the
yeah, so
100.
64, yeah.
But that doesn't include the other spaces for like hotels and stuff like that?
Does
No.
not.
Okay. That's a separate property?
Correct, yeah. Now this concept does look at those different uses, but that's not in that overall number, sorry.
Yes.
What's the dollar figure put on that property at 29 acres?
There is no dollar figure on that. City staff and the city assessors working on the dollar figure for the 29 acres. We'll be providing that to the council. Ms. Prop.
Well, I'll start out. I have a strong statement to make in our next part of the discussion, but I would vote in favor of Concept 1 if I had to, because Concept 1 retains maximum open space, and I think that should be our goal. I would not vote for Concept 2.
Any more comments on Concept 1 or Concept 2? Mr. Foytek.
This is your chance,
I
people.
appreciate the, I'm thinking back to the Riverwalk business we've been through for the past decade or so. I think the public pretty strongly at that point said we want access to the water, or we want, public access to the water, and I appreciate the use of the riverfront for the trail system and the connectivity to the other parts of the trail system, because I think that would make it very accessible to a lot of people that currently do not have access to that site.
My question is, when it comes to the development of the other 60 acres, whose responsibility is that? And how do we know that that cost of doing that is going to offset what we're currently investing in the Lakeshore Golf Course?
The remaining land, I believe, would be in the Parks Department and the Advisory Parks Board venue. Part of the implementation, I believe, would be the development of a plan similar to Rainbow Park for the balance of the property. At this point in time, we're still working on the concepts, but when it comes down to the details, I think that's exactly what the Parks Board should be working on with Mr. Mauer and his staff.
Ray, wouldn't we actually hire Rettler to do a comprehensive plan to all of this?
Correct. If we went that route, we would have a consultant come in. We've worked with a number of different consultants, but one consistently that has provided some plans. But we would, at that point, bring in somebody to help us plan those additional 60 acres roughly.
Yes, Mr. Hintz.
You have a lot of proposed property uses on here. Have we had, and I'm not asking you to name names or anything like that, but have there been inquiries for those proposed areas? Or is this just what we're hoping for as far as development down the line?
It's a combination of what we're hoping for and what the inquiries have been to this point, but there's no specific proposals in front of Plan Commission or anybody else at this point.
But people have been inquiring about it, and that's
Absolutely.
basically what I'm getting at.
Yes, independent of what's been going on, there's people interested in making some investments on Oshkosh Avenue.
Okay, thank you.
Well,
Yes, sir.
is that 29 acres only available to Oshkosh Corporation?
We're only making a proposal to Oshkosh Corporation. If we do, no, we've not proposed this to anybody else.
So nobody, you're saying nobody else could buy that property?
They could always ask, but it's still the city council's decision is to even sell the 29 acres to Oshkosh Corporation.
Okay.
Yes, Mr. Ford.
Yeah, I think number one is pretty impressive. We were just talking last night about the need for more accessible parkland here in the city. And that looks like it has the potential for high traffic. It's well connected to the community. It's a nice blend of commercial and recreational use, so there's a lot of potential there. Thank you.
Comment on that. That is already a park. You're not gaining more park space. You're losing 29 acres of park space.
But the golf course is not accessible to people that don't golf.
Yes, it is.
I can't-
All winter long, you can go there and cross-country ski, you can snowshoe.
What about the summertime?
Summertime, there's people out there all the time that aren't
That aren't
golfers.
golfing?
Right.
I
I see it. I live right over there on Graham Avenue.
But I don't feel welcome to walk on a golf course if I'm not a golfer.
Yeah, I think you guys have done a great job. I mean, this makes it more accessible. I mean, let's be honest, the golf course is not a park. I mean, I know Bill is passionate about golf, and I understand that, and I respect that. But right now, on average, we play about 900 rounds a week out there. We sell 136 season passes for the last 10 years. So there are 136 passionate people out there playing rounds of golf. I don't think we should have a private golf course for a couple hundred people when we can open this up to 65,000 people. So, I mean, this is amazing to me, so.
Excuse me, the public will have an opportunity to make their comments. This is for the Plan Commission and Advisory Parks Board.
I think you guys have done a great job making use of the water and opening it up to the entire public. Thank you.
I'd like to hear
Oh,
from
Mr.
people that haven't
Borsick.
spoken.
Yes, Mr. Borsick is one of those people.
Thank you. I appreciate the two concepts. I am concurrence with Kathy, at least in the part that I am more supportive of Plan 1 as opposed to Plan 2. But I think that part of what we need to do to keep our eye on the ball is the retention of the Oshkosh Corporation as their headquarters. I've been involved in economic and industrial development for 40 years in this community, and we don't have these opportunities very often. We look at what's happened in other communities when corporate headquarters have left. I'm sure that there's been impact in Neenah with Kimberly Clark moving. I'm sure there's been some impact in In Appleton, with AAL really going to the Twin Cities, there certainly has been impact in Seattle with Boeing moving their corporate offices and then moving some of their production facilities to the East Coast. You look at what is happening to Peoria with Caterpillar moving out. You look at what's going to happen in Decatur with ADM moving their corporate headquarters. So I think that is really the eye on the ball, is how do we make this not only an attractive proposal for Oshkosh Corporation to remain in our community, but also how do we use the remaining property for the greatest benefit of the community.
I couldn't agree more. I mean, we've lost Radford, Buckstaff, Leach, Bagash, Morgan. I mean, the list goes on and on about the jobs that have left this community. We need to bend over backwards for Bagash, I agree. Or for truck, sorry.
Mr. Tomes?
Yeah, whether it's proposal number 1, proposal number 2, concept number 3. Don't know how to do that. It's on. Whether it's, can everybody hear me now?
Yes,
Sorry. Whether it's concept number 1, number 2, number 3, will pan itself out in the future. I do look at it from a couple different ways. One is the economic development side of it. I was on the Long Range Finance Committee, and I did economic development for the corporation that I work for, just west of here. And so I look at it, the economic development part, and having these anchor companies like Oshkosh Truck and keeping their headquarters here can be a draw for other companies to move into this area, especially when you look at the amenities and things that Oshkosh has to offer. It's not just about workforce and things of that nature, it's also about the amenities and things that we have. Part of that is the parks, and I get that. And we just discussed that last night on the Planning Commission, and whoever wants to look at that when it's broadcast can see that we talked about having additional parks. When we have developments here in the city, they're supposed to dedicate some land for park space, but they can pay a fee in lieu of that. And what we're concerned about, we talked about last night, we just approved 2 developments. We approved another development not too long ago, and we have another one, an apartment complex that we're looking at, and everybody is just paying the fee. So therefore, we don't necessarily have an abundance of park space in the areas where maybe we're being developed. And we talked about how do we handle that and how do we start mapping areas, whether they be on the far north side or on the west side, wherever the development looks to be going. How do we start, as the Planning Commission, working with the Parks Department and your commission, how do we start to identify those areas and ensure that we have, if we're taking away space, that we're adding space, or if we're adding more residential, that we're putting those parks in place. So part of it is a little bit bigger thing for me, is identifying additional park space, even though we're taking some away, potentially taking some away here. We're taking away a piece, not the entire park. You know, in terms of, and like Tom said, not everybody has access to that golf course. I don't feel right go walking on a golf course at 7 o'clock at night. I wouldn't do that.
It's posted no trespassing also.
Probably even better I don't do that. So I do get concerned about the economic development and the impact. And again, I'm trying to focus on what's best for the 60,000 plus people here, rather than maybe 300-400 people that use that golf course, you know, on an annual basis. So I'm looking at, you know, how do we benefit it? How do we get the tax base increases, you know, the proper land use, whether it be here or elsewhere, to put additional park resources and things of that in place. So that's what I'm gonna be dwelling on, and I look at it from this standpoint, there is visibility, there is a way of having that anchor to be able to attract top talent to this area. Having been in that position, and again, I worked for a company west of here, a large company, attracting high-profile talent to this area is extremely difficult. It is not easy to do. And when you get to a corporation like this that is expanding, just like our company, or my company was expanding, trying to get that top-name talent to come to this area is very difficult. One way to combat that is to have corporate headquarters like Oshkosh Truck here, Fortune 500 company, along with some of the other areas that we have in Merck Marine and Bemis and Alliance Laundry, in these areas that will help us to attract other talent to this area. So that's the way I kind of look at it. It's not necessarily planning commission type looksy as far as land use, and I understand that. But I'm looking at, okay, what's the overall impact of the decisions on land use, decisions on economic opportunity for the community, our ability to increase our tax base, which will then allow us to have the revenues to fix the roads, to do the things that the community wants us to do.
On that note, to kind of expand on that, I guess my biggest concern is that I fear that we're headed down a slippery slope here with anyone who wants to. I don't discount Oshkosh Corporation's impact on the community. Absolutely, they are the top employer. However, what if in 10 years someone comes along, another big employer, and says, we want to buy Menominee Park because it's got a big site and that's what they're interested in. I fear we're going down that path, that all of a sudden just any open park space is for sale. So what are we going to do to combat that? Because like you said, a lot of people are paying the fee and they're not developing that space. So I think there's a greater discussion here that needs to happen as part of this planning process to figure some of that stuff out and make sure that that doesn't happen.
And I would, part of what I would say in response to that is, if you noticed, everything was along the interstate. There's a reason for that. They don't want to be at Menominee Park. They don't want to drive through the city of Oshkosh. They want to be along they want to be along 41. And that's why, as you said, you showed, this is one of those rare places along 41 where everything fell into place. And I understand the process that went through that, because we've been talking a little bit about it amongst ourselves once this came out, and the site makes sense, and it appears to me, especially with number one, that you're trying to work with the community. You're trying to keep something valuable, which is all this beautiful, space along the river, plus, and encouraging people to use that riverfront. And as far as I'm concerned, if there's going to be a development there, this is what we would look at. So I really like this proposal.
Concept one?
Yes.
Quite honestly, if somebody wanted a chunk of Menominee Park, I don't think any of us would be having this discussion. It would just be no. I look at this a little differently, and I know I've got a couple colleagues here that disagree with me, but number one, I don't believe that we should be in private enterprise. I don't believe that we as a government should be using taxpayer dollars to compete against other private golf courses. Several years ago, we threw $1.5 million at that. Never paid it back, nor does anybody who has their own golf course have that luxury of an unlimited city taxpayer dollars. So it's really not a park that we're giving away here. We're giving away, or we're selling a chunk of a failing private business.
On that note, Bill, I was on that committee to help redesign that golf course, along with Todd Gray, who was a financial person with the school district at the time, and Mike Lonko, who worked for Pete Dye, who designs golf courses. And we came up with that $1.5 million renovation. And we came to the city and said, we are going to have a shortfall of about $800,000. And we need a subsidy of 10 to 12 years to fix that problem. City said, go ahead, you've got it. We never received dime one. So it's not on the golf course's plate. It should be on the city's plate that thing is in debt. The golf course, without that, is making money.
It's not. I asked Ray to bring some audited financials. Can you pass these out, everybody? Just in the last eight or 9 years, the golf course has never made money. And this is audited, is that correct? These are audited? Yeah. And I don't want to make this about money, but 17 years ago, this Parks Board voted unanimously to kick in borrow 1.5 million from the city. And I have got a copy of the resolution too. I don't know if anybody wants to see the resolution. But on July 25th, 2000, the Parks Board voted 6-0, unanimously carried, to borrow the money, and then bottom, it says, be it further resolved that the Lakeshore Municipal Golf Course repay the general fund the total amount of subsidies provided by the general budget together with interest at the city's rate of this project from future profits. Well, there are no future profits. I think on average we lose about $35,000 to $50,000 a year. So I want to be clear about this. This is not a park. This is a failing private business that we compete against other businesses in this community. Government should not be in private business, let alone losing money annually, year after year. We also promised to pay the money back. 17 years ago, this board promised to pay the money back. It wasn't paid back. That's a terrible use of taxpayers' money. $1.5 million.
Yes,
Mr. Chair?
Ms. Prop.
Do we want to have this kind of conversation now, or do we want to do it when it's under our general
Land
discussion
disposition?
time?
Is there any more concept plan comments? Because then I think you're right, we do need to transition to the next item on the agenda.
I would just like to say I support concept one. I'm strongly in favor of retaining Oshkosh Corp in our community. I think that's should be our most important objective here, is to have them stay in the community. I do think that I'd like to see more dedicated kind of park space, so not just open spaces concept, but more ball diamonds, more volleyball courts, things that could bring people to the site. So a little bit of what you see in concept two, as far as that is concerned, the things that are being done at Rainbow Park as part of their master plan, extending that into some of the open spaces that you see, so some more dedicated uses that would be more appealing to more citizens and just have an open walking space. So, thank you.
Very good. Yes?
With a potential sale to Oshkosh Truck, where would the funds funnel to as far as with the sale?
That's an excellent question, and that's up to the city council.
Okay. I would like to see it possibly earmarked for park expansion in different areas or improvements.
That'll be definitely one of the comments we relay.
I don't think we can move forward with this project if that's not part of the process. It has to be, those trails are going to take millions of dollars to develop. It has to be, that has to be part of the plan, that money's going exactly there before we approve it.
And I would agree with, in fact, because we looked at the Rainbow Park plan a long time ago, it would be nice to see that implemented. And obviously, it's going to take money to do that.
Well, it sounds like we've made the transition to, if we're going to dispose of it, what we're going to do with the money. How about Ms. Prop had some comments regarding the actual disposition, which would be the next
Excuse me?
item?
Yeah, I've got a statement to make that relates to some of the things that have been said, but on the next, are we at
Yes, I
that
think
point
we're
now
there.
in the agenda?
Yep.
Okay. I promised the Plan Commission yesterday I would do this, and so I'm doing it. I'm going to sound like I'm a member of the Parks Board, because I'm passionate about parks. I have to disagree with some things people have said. Lakeshore is not just a golf course, it is a park. When people are asked about quality of life assets in a community, parks are number one on the list. And I personally think it's an affront to suggest that any green public park space is a, quote, underutilized, unquote, chunk of land that should be paved over for development, even for a premier company like Oshkosh Corporation. It's my personal belief that Lakeshore Golf Course is not struggling. It is a destination for golfers around northeast Wisconsin. It is well used, 25,000 rounds is not 200 people, well maintained, well drained, thanks to the 2000 renovations, compact but challenging, a delight to play. And every year, this gentleman is right that more or less golf course revenue essentially covers operating expenses, the basic operating expenses. There is no taxpayer levy that I know about. But I agree with this gentleman that handed this out, because the city finance director sent me the same financial report this afternoon, which reveals that in fact the enterprise fund does owe $800,000 to the general fund. She said this resulted from a huge debt balloon payment in 2009 to cover the course drainage improvements that were made evidently in 2000, and to charging depreciation annually. I will argue that this drainage work was worth every penny and should not be solely viewed as a golf course benefit. Had the work not been done at that time, drainage improvements would be essential today to create a buildable parcel for Oshkosh Corp. Or a decently drained community park at a much higher cost. Ponds on the Concept 1 plan are in fact, I think, the golf course ponds. I admit it, I'm a golfer, full disclosure, but the ponds function very well and the course is great. Lakeshore Golf Course is about the same size as Menominee Park. All Oshkosh parkland totals only 442 acres, including the 100-acre golf course. But Oshkosh falls well below national standards for a community's parks, open space, and recreation area, which call for 7 to 10 acres per 1,000 population. I'm not telling the Parks Board anything they don't know. Oshkosh provides just over 5 acres, not including the golf course. Add that in, and we're still well short of national parkland standards. So I say, okay, golf may eventually lose its popularity. If that happens, the 103-acre golf course should become a community park with its own master plan for recreation facilities, the kind of thing we've talked about. Either way, my personal belief is that this prime waterfront green space should remain public. This is a priceless asset. I believe earlier somebody called it a world-class location for a headquarters. Well, it's a world-class park location, people. This priceless asset simply cannot be replaced. If the council does decide to sell, the Plan Commission will be asked to change the comprehensive land use plan from parks and open space to a commercial designation. As a member of the Plan Commission, I will be voting no to reducing our already low park inventory. Oshkosh should be adding parkland, as was suggested earlier, not subtracting. And in line with one of the gentleman's comments over here, I think changing the comprehensive land use plan could also be a dangerous step with unintended consequences. City Council might vote to sell to Oshkosh Corporation with the understanding that perhaps Concept 1 or some other concept plan will be put in place. What if Oshkosh Corporation changes that concept or backs out in the end after we've changed the plan? That opens the golf course land for any and all average development or even high-end condos or million-dollar homes. It does, once the land use plan is changed. Somebody said, would we offer the Millers Bay frontage to developers of high-end condos? Think of the tax money that would generate, and think of the loss to the public. So I feel this site has a potential. Well, it is a public treasure. It's got huge potential, if not as a golf course, as a community park. I do want to keep Oshkosh Corp., but let's try to find another site. So thank you for listening to my long diatribe.
Thank you.
More comments on the disposition. Mr. Tomes.
Yeah, I mean, I don't understand why it has to be all or nothing. I don't get that in this community at all. It's always, I've been on the planning commission for almost 9 years now, and we come up with certain things like the CVS, oh, geez, polarized everybody. It's gonna reduce my property values, it's gonna do this, it's gonna do that. We talk about mixed use all the time. We talk about neighborhood green space and parklands. We don't talk about having a piece of land way over here. It's great parkland, but nobody ever uses it. Now, I'm not talking about this specific space. We don't have a good plan for land use and park use that is closer to where the population is. And I don't understand why we can't have both. Why we can't use this particular land to service more people than what's using it today. And by that, I mean, if you have commercial buildings, you have retail spots, you have a really nice trail system that people could come out at lunch and walk on the trail system, sit down and eat their lunch, enjoy the water, which you can't do today there, right? We have a river walk system, which we talk about at nauseum, how important the river walk is downtown. That's great. But I would like to see it extend further up so people can enjoy it more. So I don't understand this concept, oh, it's gotta be all or nothing. Why we can't enjoy the amenities we have and build retail and commercial and surround it with park space and be, kind of have a homogeneous type of use rather than a single use, all or nothing. That doesn't make sense to me. It never has, and it doesn't make good planning sense to me. It makes more sense to have mixed use capability, like the old neighborhoods that you used to see down in Oshkosh, and I've only been here 25 years, so I haven't seen the old neighborhoods, but my father grew up in Milwaukee, and they used to have that. Neighborhood areas where you went to you had a dry cleaner, you had the barber, you had a restaurant, you had, all those kinds of establishments, all within residential. There was commercial buildings, there was commercial property, there was retail, there was parks, there was building. That's a community. Not having a piece over here, some over here, some over here. That's not. And I'm in favor, whether it be concept 1, concept 2, concept 3, I don't care. At some point in time, it's just going to evolve, and the right disposition for me on this property as we evolve as a community is for a mixed-use establishment with parkland around it, commercial property around it, retail space around it, access to the highway, so that we can build something that people will want to come to that don't live here. Appleton now is 15 minutes away. It's 15 minutes, and this area is easily accessible for those kinds of things. And that's what you want. You want to bring amenities in that people don't have anywhere else, and they can come here, whether it be, hey, go look at Oshkosh Truck and see some of the, if they put museums inside, I don't know what they're going to do to demonstrate that, or you have a really neat trail system, waterfront system that people can walk through, walk and enjoy trees and things of that nature, but it still also be commercial, retail. People have a place to where they can go and they can stay at that hotel, walk over and enjoy a restaurant where they see a nice view of the water, walk down the trails and walk all the way down to Lake Winnebago from there. That's what I'm looking at. That's the envision and the thought process I had and have had for several years and keep fighting for in the Planning Commission to do things like that.
Mr. Borsick.
I'd like to bring it back. I think that what Jeff has merit, that we look at things holistically and that development evolves. But if the question is, do we support potential disposition of part of the property to the Oshkosh Corporation, my answer is yes. How we do the other development or what we do with other parklands in the community is, is important but incidental to the question at hand. And I think that what is important to note, as I understand the facts, there is one site and one site only that's going to work, that's going to retain Oshkosh Corporation, the potential of retaining Oshkosh Corporation's world headquarters here. And it's that simple. Whether it's members of the Parks Board or the Plan Commission or the City Council, do we want to be on record that we want to retain Oshkosh Corporation in the city? And if it is, it is to be the affirmative of disposing of this nominal 30 acres, which I support.
Yes, Mr. Walter.
First of all, I'd like to thank Kathleen for reading her statement. That's about the only one I've heard tonight that I agree with anyway. Now, I believe we should, I'm not in favor of any of the concepts myself, and everybody knows it. And I'm not going to get in a big argument with my fellow board member, Mr. Miller, here, because we argue all the time anyway. So there's not much sense in doing it here. But I think we should just let the public talk now. I mean, I think we've heard from everybody here. You know what we want. We want to keep it. But I'd like to thank Kath. That is really a good statement. I couldn't have done that in a million years. But she says everything that I wanted to say. So, as far as I'm concerned, I think we should hear from the public. They sat here long enough. I mean, this was just a matter of, this was a backdoor, to me, this was the biggest backdoor thing I've ever done. And I've been on this board for 20 years. And all of a sudden, Mr. Roloff, and I like Mr. Roloff, but all of a sudden, he comes in the back door, and we're getting this shoved down our throats anyway. And I don't like it. That's why I haven't been saying anything, because I don't like anything shoved down my throat. After 20 years on this board, that's the first time that really happened. That's a miracle too. But anyway, I think we should let the public talk, unless somebody else got something really important.
I just have a question about process. This may be our only opportunity, people, to tell the City Council what the Parks Board members here think and what we Plan Commissioners think about the concepts. Because your meeting is next Monday, and I don't know if you've got that on your agenda, and I don't know that the Plan Commission has it on their agenda for the last...
It isn't going to be on our agenda.
Well, and I don't know that it will be on ours either on the third Tuesday. So this is our opportunity. So if people on our two boards want to say their piece in public, we should do it now. And then hear from the public. I agree.
That's what I said, unless somebody else got something, but I don't think we're going to change our minds here at all.
I got one question. Ray, why is it not going to be on our agenda?
We talked about that internally with staff, and this is the first opportunity for both of these boards and commissions to have this discussion. There's no decision made by the council at this point to support a proposal. So until that time, there's nothing to have a discussion on. This is, again, it's conceptual. Once the council makes their decision to say, yes, we'd like to go ahead and support a proposal to Oshkosh Corporation, after that is when I believe the Plan Commission and the Parks Board would have the opportunity to weigh in. And I believe that is scheduled possibly for some discussion next week.
At the council level.
At the council level.
Mm-hmm.
Excuse me. That doesn't seem to make any sense to me.
Really?
That, you know, we typically, the planning, both of ours are advisory.
What about the mic? Your
Are
mic
both
again?
advisory boards to the common council. It doesn't seem to me that they are getting any advice from either one of us as to what our feelings are as boards before they're going to be asked to make their decision. is that, to Kathy's point, is that the process? They're gonna make this decision without really input on land disposition from the planning commission or parks, recommendation as far as where they're coming at. We may not agree, we may agree, I don't know. And I don't see how they would know. So Alan, can you speak to that?
The council will get a report on all the comments made at both the public input session here tonight, both from Plan Commission and Parks Board and the public. They'll get the information from the website commentary, and they'll also get it from the open house comments we're expecting for tomorrow night.
Yeah, but Alan, typically they would get something from us in our public meeting where the planning commission would vote on a change in disposition. And I don't see that happening. So how do they know what the planning commission's thought process is, what our recommendation is? I mean, they aren't seeing that in any kind of public forum or any kind of public report to them saying, we recommend X, Y, Z on land disposition. Whether it's concept 1 or 2, that's their ballot week. We're actually would probably enter into it because we may change that land use, and in addition, it's not only land use, but it's also the zoning that would have to go into play, right?
Absolutely.
And we would control that probably with putting in a plan development.
You're talking about a lot of implementation items that we just
Well, I
wouldn't have.
understand that, but until they get, if we just look at the land disposition itself, I would think that they would want something that's formally, that we discussed on the planning commission and formally then would put forth to them. I mean, Tom, is that the way we've done it?
Yeah, this seems backwards to me.
Yes, it is. You're pushing the cart really hard. That horse is pushing the cart
Well,
really hard.
And I understand that we have a timing issue, and I get that. But I just would think that either this is important enough where you would have a special session of the planning commission, special session of the Parks Department that is specifically to talk about that item, okay?
Yes.
And us to specifically deal with land disposition. The Parks Department board specifically deal with their, their piece of it. And we give that formally to them rather than see stuff on website and comments. I mean, this isn't even really, I mean, it's a public meeting, but it's not televised. I guess it's recorded.
Yes,
See
it
what's
is.
recorded. But I would thought that the planning commission would go to a vote on a change in disposition. Well,
Absolutely.
You've been there longer than,
We're gonna vote on it when it's all done.
Terry, it is all done.
I know, but that's when we're gonna get the vote on it. That's why I said, after 20 years on this board, this is the first time they've ever backdoored us this bad. Because when we get the vote on it, it's gonna be through the council, it's gonna be through everybody else, and then we're gonna get the vote on it.
The only thing.
What I'm gonna vote on, I got no clue.
The council has to give staff direction as to whether we'll even submit a
And
proposal.
as far as the other, if this goes through, which I'm sure it's probably gonna go through, I mean, I'm not stupid. That part about the other 60 acres, that's not a little thing. Mr. Borzik said, well, that's just a little 60 acres. That's the biggest part of it. If this, well, like I said, it's probably gonna go through. But that other 60 acres, that's a big deal, what we're gonna do with that. Because if you're gonna screw up the whole golf course, sell part of it, that other 60 acres, that's a big deal. I don't wanna see Oshkosh Corp going in there and then all of a sudden 60 acres comes, Oshkosh Corp decides in whatever time that maybe they don't wanna be here no matter what they build, and all of a sudden we got condos and low-rent apartments and everything else going along there. I want to make damn sure that if it does go through, that we got a say, or the people got a say, in what's going in. And the way this seems to be working out, we don't have a say in anything. Like I said, let the public talk on it.
And as to follow up on Mr. Tome's point, there's about 8 items of implementation that we can't get done, physically just can't get done by the end of October. And you mentioned the land use amendment, a rezoning. There's a lot of items that just can't be done. I expect there could be a special meeting for Parks and/or Plan Commission if the council actually directs us to proceed with the proposal on the 10th.
Yeah,
But
Alan,
I don't want to presume that we're going to do that until the council gives us that direction.
Yeah, but Alan, I'm not talking about implementation. I'm talking about land disposition.
Mhm.
We're talking about land disposition, which is typically the planning commission's responsibility to change that or recommend a potential change to the land disposition, because that's actually a change to the comprehensive plan.
Yes.
So I'm not sure how the city, how the council would know if the planning commission is not in favor of changing the disposition of the land. I think that would be important for them to know. They may still go ahead and decide to do it because they're the elected officials, I get that. But we should at least, I think, have some kind of direction from the planning commission as to what we're saying is, and again, I'm not even sure what land disposition we're actually changing. Are we changing just the Oshkosh truck area and all the rest of it remains as park? Or are we changing pieces of that too? That's what I'm a little bit curious and don't quite understand. And maybe I'm just a stupid one sitting over here that don't understand it. I'd like to hear from the rest of the planning commissions, especially David, because he's been on there longer than the city's been here.
Alan,
It
first,
is-
are you done, Jeff?
Yeah.
Jeff, you're finished?
I'm done.
Okay.
Yeah.
One thing, this came about in what, May 25th, I think the story broke in the Northwestern.
When we were doing the wetland delineation to see if we
Right.
could even propose this site.
I believe at that time, it should have come both to the Planning Commission and the Parks Board to get our input on that. And like Gary said, yeah, this is all behind closed doors and everything else. And with this major event going on right now, it should have gone to referendum. It should have gone to referendum, not just by one person deciding what to do. Because right now, the city council is in a no-win situation. They're darned if they do and they're darned if they don't.
And it is the city council's decision, and we're providing them as much input as we can before the 10th. When it comes to the land disposition.
But you're in that time restraint, which we could have had more time if we would have been brought to a head back in May or April, whenever it came to be. David, your turn.
I think that perhaps the process is a little sloppy and perhaps a little compressed. But I am not uncomfortable letting at least what my feeling is as a member of the Plan Commission. And we do have, 6 members of the Plan Commission, and you sort of see the consensus of graduate of the Oshkosh school system. Is that we can see what the tenor is, what the recommendation is from the Plan Commission. Because I think that what we need, I suspect that this is our opportunity to give you our sense, in the sense of what direction to give to the city, and that if we are successful, we bring this back and go through the check the box things that we have to do to close the deal.
Yes, one of the unsaid things at this point is Oshkosh Corp still might not pick this site, and then we wouldn't be going through a land disposition process. Any other comments from Plan Commission or Parks Board? And then I do want to open it up to the public, and Ms. Nyforth, I think I have a microphone for you.
Can I just add something? I'm pretty sure that this is not coming up for vote until November for the council. So this will come back to both of our committees before the council votes.
All right. Thank you for being so patient with us. You can see it's a very complex issue. Ms. Nyforth, I told her she was going to act a little bit like Phil Donahue this evening and provide a microphone for all the questions or comments that people would have. And she said, "Who's Phil Donahue?" And I said, "Well, he used to go out in the crowd and have a microphone and people, so people can make those comments. So if you have any comments, raise your hand and Ms. Nyforth will get right over to you." Could we get your name and address, please?
3-minute time limit.
And there is a 3-minute time limit. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is David Zerby. I live at 1031 Washington Avenue. I'm on the administrative staff of Aurora Medical Center here in Oshkosh. I've lived here in Oshkosh for 18 years with my family. All 4 children graduated from North High School. Proud of this community and the progress we've made. My wife and I really like to ride our bicycles, ride our kayak or canoe, and spend time in our parks and on the water. And we're very proud to be here in Oshkosh. As a healthcare leader and a business person, I've seen my area of town grow greatly. There was no Festival Foods, no Menards when Aurora broke ground on West Haven Drive. We've increased in the last 20 years from 150 to 1,500 employees. We're a proud employer here in this community. All things considered, and I want to thank you all, Parks and Plan Commission members, for volunteering and for spending your time to help advise our city. I'm strongly in favor of the disposition of this property to the Oshkosh Corporation. I think it's critically important that we have a world-class employer headquartered here in our city. I believe that we can not succumb to the tyranny of the or, but have the and, both and. We can continue to improve access to all of our citizens to the waterfront. We can continue to improve opportunities to walk and bike in our community, which contribute to health and quality of life here. Thank you very much.
Hi, Jim Michelson, 1515 North Point Street. I'm chairman of the Bicycle and Pedestrian Committee. I was an ex-member of the Parks Board for many years. Our Bike and Ped Committee, the Bike and Ped plan that's in existence today was from 2011, and it shows a multi-purpose trail in this area along the golf course, hooking up, which would be the Heritage Tribal Trail into the new park, Rainbow Park, and the master plan shows like you said before, shows a trail feeding into that. The point I'd like to make, whether it stays a golf course or one of these concepts, this link is so important. It's so important to our whole trail plan. We've developed the river walk. We have the Wyatt Wash. Now we have the Heritage Tribal Trail. This is the link we need. And when I was on Parks Board and now on the Bike and Ped Committee, it's so important to have this link. And we're rewriting our Bike and Ped plan right now. We've been working on it. And a number of the members on the Bike and Pedestrian Committee know how important this link is, whether it's a golf course, whether it's a proposal like this. We need that link so that we can connect. We have beautiful trails, but right now we don't connect a lot. And that's why this is so key to connect the south side of the river to the rest of our trail system. Thank you.
Logan Youngbacher, 151 Dawes Street. I'm 28. I've lived here my whole life. I was born here. And like previous comments, I'm an avid bicycler. I like what we've done on 41, connecting the Wee Wash Trail, and I hate that I have to go right past that beautiful land. And like a comment earlier today, I'm not a golfer. I don't feel welcome in that area. And I support the disposition of the land to Oshkosh Corporation.
Joe Pica, 240 North Meadow Street. My question is, how did you come up with the October 31st? Why is this?
I can answer that. That was the date that CBRE gave us for the proposal.
Why, and it can't be later? Why does this have to be so quickly?
The information that I've gathered is that Oshkosh Corporation wants to make a decision in November.
They want to make, so they're forcing you to do this?
Indirectly, yes.
Yes, they are. Okay.
We're on their time schedule.
Robert Warnke, 426 West 16th. I got a couple questions. First of all, who commissioned the engineering company to draw these concepts up? Was it the city? And I want to know how much they paid to get these concepts.
That would be the city of Oshkosh. That would be my department, and we have a contract with them on an hourly rate.
Hourly rate. How much approximately are you going to be paying to get these? You're running around the question.
If they have to continue with this all the way through, if the council decides that they do want to submit a proposal and we have multiple meetings in the future, it could exceed $40,000.
$40,000. Okay, I have a little bit of experience in county government. Another thing that I have not heard, I mean, you're painting a pretty picture on these concepts. They're just beautiful. But the problem is nobody has mentioned $1 of how much this is going to cost. And it looks pretty darn expensive to what I see. Who's going to pay for all these roads? Who's going to pay for all these trails? Who's going to put all this landscaping in? And I'm sure it's going to be the city of Oshkosh. So, you know, we need a number. And we don't need a number now. And then once they start on the project and get it approved, all of a sudden they're coming around and saying, oh, well, we had a little bit of a cost overrun. Just like you had a cost overrun on the basketball thing, worth $7 million. You know, this is totally wrong what you're doing. Totally wrong. I played golf out there for 55 years. And this gentleman said that it's a private golf course. It's not a private golf course. They played 25,000 rounds out there. And I mean, what are you talking about? You have no idea. So that's about all I got to say. This is a crazy thing, and several people have told me they are totally sick over this, and that includes me.
Hi, Doug Zelmer, 1311 Bismarck Avenue, Oshkosh. If you don't know where Bismarck is, it's the west side. I'm over by Perry Tippler / Alps Charter School. I am for the Morgan District site. I wish the Northwestern would have explained better what that site is. The old Morgan doors, remember the walkway they had up? How wonderful that was? If they put it over on the Morgan District, you're by the water, you could put some boat moors in and you could schmooze government officials, take them on the water, Fox River. There's great restaurants. It's close to the new arena. That area needs a little bit uplifting anyway. Downtown is on the uptick. The golf course maybe wouldn't be such a bad place, but I think the Morgan District would be much better. I think we should give that serious consideration. Thank you.
And that was one of the sites that was proposed. They've just not asked us for any follow-up information on that site.
Rob Hartley, 1711 Pinoca Street. I'd like to address a question to the gentleman that put together the presentation and the concepts. At any time during your preparation, did you consider a third concept that would incorporate Lakeshore Golf Course into the overall plans? And before you answer, I do want to let you know that I have spent the last couple of weeks consulting with professional golfers, retired, and one specific one that retired and lived in the area here. He's now a retired master professional at his design courses all over the world. And in his opinion, it all could be incorporated into one thing very creatively. And I'm just asking, did you consider concept 3, making everyone happy?
We did not, as a part of this project, look to reconfigure the golf course to include a campus.
Kimberly Galing, 1550 North Eagle Street. I'm also speaking on behalf of my father, Stephen Galing, who's the trustee of the property that I'm residing in. I have one question regarding the concept plan. The initial 2D plan showed that Eagle Street would be connected all the way through. I'm particularly interested in this because my property lays basically on the golf course in between where Eagle Street currently does not connect. In this 3D plan, I see that there's a circle drive, and I just wanted to clarify with the design if that street is going to be connected through or not.
Do you know where she's talking? Okay.
Yeah, so in this concept, we did show a connection just as a loop that would tie into it, no?
Okay, so there is no current plan to extend Eagle Street to be connected from basically where your trailhead is, just north of there. There's some green space before you reach the other half of Eagle Street. My house sits right on that green space.
I'm sorry, no, not in this plan. We did not show that. Yeah.
The other commentary that I have, and I'm not going to speak about whether we should support the plan or not, my main concerns are, as a resident of the adjoining golf course, is what the use is going to be for Oshkosh Corporation. Are they going to be housing military vehicles there? Are they going to be housing demonstrations? No one has spoken about whether or not there's going to be a large fence surrounding the property. As a defense contractor, I fully suspect that that's going to take place. The current properties have chain link fence with barbed wire. How is that going to incorporate into the plan to have a trail system? What are the lighting restrictions going to be? What are the noise restrictions going to be? I'm aware that current Oshkosh Corporation properties do have noise complaints quite frequently. So as a neighbor, I'm concerned about the effect on the existing neighborhoods and the visual that we will see when this building is erected. I like the plan where you are going to maintain as much of the canopy as possible. I have a second-story living room, which is a pretty unique property that overlooks the golf course right now. If those trees go away, I'm going to have a really nice view of the parking lot and probably Highway 41. So I just ask that the Plan Commission and those in this proposal process consider those things and make the public aware of the plans with respect to that, so that we can be better informed in speaking to the council about our thoughts on this whole proposal.
Okay, I'm going to try to address a couple of the questions I thought I heard there. One is whether or not Oshkosh Corporation plans on storing their vehicles or anything like that on their site. In our conversations with them and them discussing what their program is, there's no desire, or they do not plan on storing any vehicles on this site. This is purely like a headquarters for them. That's why we show whether or not the parking will be exactly where we're showing it. This is the best representation we have based on their program, and then what we know we would recommend the site parameters be. It's like the buffers would be very consistent with what we're showing here, but you know, you're not going to expect to see chain link fence that's going to be holding storage facility or storage vehicles by any means. It's not what they're trying to do on this site.
If I could add that, they would have to follow all local ordinances and zoning for lighting. It all have to be approved by multiple bodies before.
And there are almost no odds of us approving storage there.
And my expectation is it would be a planned development, and we'd notice the neighborhood when they actually have plans, so you'd be able to review that prior to any action by the Plan Commission or City Council.
My name is Joe Urick, and I reside at 919 Huron. First of all, I want to say that I have no financial attachment to any development here. I'm listening to council members, I'm listening to park commission members, I'm listening to planning. And I want to say, well, before I say that, I want to say I'm in my 12th year of retirement. And I've enjoyed, well, I had 4 years at West Haven, and the last 8 years of season pass with some devoted golfers out at Lakeshore Golf Course. That's been one of the best things in my life. I don't run Florida, I don't run here, whatever. It's been a lot of golf right there. A very, very important thing that you can't replace with a few aesthetics. The trails are not covered with people or whatever. I'm sure there's still a lot more ants using those trails than there are human beings. I don't like my golf taken away, I don't have a whole lot of alternatives as far as another course goes. And I just think that, you know, I heard some talk about the last 10 years or whatever. Like I said, I've only been there for 8. But the improvements that were made into Lakeshore to make it a good golf course, and I'm addressing basically the drainage. Wasn't it about 5 years ago that we had problems with flooding? West Eden area. I remember the nice ritzy homes, and go down the block, and there was their belongings out on the thing, and we were wondering, what are we going to do with controlling flooding in this town? Now, we did a pretty good job, I think, with that, with some of these different holding areas and stuff like that. But the biggest thing that I'm seeing here, somebody is really wanting to make a buck. And I have another question that I didn't see addressed. Going back maybe another 10 years. Wasn't it about 10 years ago that Oshkosh Truck had a significant layoff? They are also related, being so tightly related and such a small, although huge, if they didn't have how many of these contracts coming through, where would Oshkosh Truck be? I'm just wondering how significant really is that company in 20 years? Is the drone business going to be more important than $1 million, what do you call it, mine? Okay.
I can answer that. We typically deal with the information that Oshkosh Corp would give us when it comes to what their plans are, and they've done a programming based on what their expectations are for their workforce. So that's what they've presented as a schematic or a concept.
I don't think that's very deep. And I just want to say that I think that you elected officials in all those different places, in the planning, whatever, I don't know. Right now, I'll tell you, I don't see that many visionaries here. I see, if I was Donald Trump for a night, I might say, you're all fired.
My name is Sue Lloyd. I'm from 1729 Delaware. Did a nice job on the artwork. I like the trail. I like the one trail that goes around the outside for bikers. I have several friends that do that. I myself golf. I'm one of the 300 that they're saying, but there's a lot more than that. And every one of those golfers has at least 30 children, grandchildren, parents that may go golfing with them at time, but back them up in how they feel about this whole thing being done. Most of what I want to say, I'll say to the city council, because they are the ones that are truly going to vote. And it looks like this is going to go through. I hate the fact, like the gentleman in the yellow said, it was ramrodded through, and the people of Oshkosh truly do believe it was done that way. The only thing missing on your picture is a driving range for another jab to the golfers.
My name is Karen Hartley, and I live on 1711 Pinoqua Street. And I also am very concerned about the fact that there were only 2 proposals. I believe that our hiking, our biking, access to the waterfront are very, very important. But we can all live together. We can have a proposal where Oshkosh Corp can have their beautiful wow visual on 41. We can have a golf course. We can figure it out. You've already closed off on that thing. You've closed off the end of Pinoqua Street. So let's add some holes and make it swing around that way. And then on the edge, there's no reason why on that road you can't have a biking trail. Bikers can already go from the end of Pinoqua Street up to the golf course. They just haven't extended it to go on to the tribal trail. We can all live together. We can make this a win-win. But I don't see our council and our city manager is trying to ramrod this through as quick as he can, get no input from the people. I've heard input from everybody here. We all want a golf course. We all want to keep Oshkosh Court. We all want to have a bike trail. Well, let's make it happen instead of making everybody divided, everybody fighting, and making our city a distasteful place right now. You're afraid to go anywhere and bring up the topic.
I just want to remind our audience, it's not the city manager, it's not the council, it's not us. These are the guidelines that the consultants were given for us to deal with. So we have a deadline to provide the consulting firm for Truck this information. All I'm saying is we don't have that luxury. But thank you for your input.
Business works. Hi, my name is Linda Javaltis, and I live at 1650 North Point Street. I really think this is a good idea on the one hand, because Oshkosh could use a facelift. We need all the help we can get, and I think in our city. But I think the planning could be a little different. I mean, most of the area that I'm looking at anyway is parking lot, and that's loss of habitat for animals, birds. Okay, so it's a golf course, but there's a lot of animals that live there right now, believe it or not. And so what I'd like to see is a parking ramp or underground parking. I know it's around water, so that's probably not possible, but to just shift it, because, you know, it's like paving paradise and putting up a parking lot. So, you know, I think it's a great idea for the folks of Oshkosh, but I think it could be redone to just keep our environment, because it is a jewel, okay? So we want to keep as much of it as a jewel as possible, green space as possible. So I don't know what Oshkosh Truck would think about building a ramp. Okay, this is Wisconsin. They know that there's snow in the wintertime, so a ramp would suit them just fine. That's win-win, right? So it would give us more green space.
Hi, Linda Monday, 27 Allen Avenue. First, I will say I don't want Oshkosh Corporation to leave Oshkosh. Absolutely not. I also don't want to give up my golf course. If we, as you pointed out, if somebody said they wanted Menominee Park, we would not be having this discussion. And I think we're doing a terrible disservice to our older population. Let's put in some more ball diamonds and soccer fields. We don't do that. This is like our own, many of the golfers, this is the only park they use in Oshkosh. So if you want to talk about taking care of our population, I think that you're doing a disservice. I am also the president of the Ladies League out at Muni, and we have a lot of 70-year-olds, 80-year-olds that have golfed there their entire life. Driving out to Utica or Farview is really not an option for them. That really limits where they can play. In looking at where we can play next year, the cost will be a lot more if we have to go somewhere else. Well, the only other course in the city, and I think that's a terrible disservice to that population. All ages use the golf course. We have someone sitting here from Oshkosh West. I assume she's on the golf team? No? But the schools play there. There are children of all ages play there. The number of season passes doesn't tell you anything. I golf there all the time. I don't have a season pass. You say it's not about money. Well, honestly, it's all about money. And actually, we have told them they should raise their prices a couple dollars around. We can absorb that. That'll cover your $35,000 deficit every year. As far as the public use, I agree with what she said. There is absolutely no way we can't come with that wraparound around the water for everyone to use that. I am sure that with all the planning you did there, you could figure that out. You could also put your boat docks there and your fishing piers, because people fish down there all the time. If you were down there, you would know that. And I also feel that you talk about retail space. We don't need more retail space. We have a lot of empty buildings sitting along 41 that we should be using before we're adding more. And I feel that Many people have wanted to get rid of the golf course off of the city books for a long time, and this was just a perfect opportunity to do it. And we're told this is the only site Oshkosh Corporation is interested in. We haven't heard that from Oshkosh Corporation, so I'm not sure I believe it, because so much was done behind closed doors that there might be other options that we are not being told of because they want to get rid of the golf course. So I guess that's all I have to say.
My name is John Newman. I live at 1013 Washington Avenue. I've been in Oshkosh for 3 years, and I have fallen in love. My job is with Aurora Healthcare. I am the chief medical officer, and my job is to recruit and retain doctors. And I'm torn because doctors love golfing, and doctors also love patients. And our job in the recruitment and retention of talent to bring healthcare to Oshkosh is linked to economic development. It's also linked to other industries that are bringing us diversity, inclusion, talent. And I can honestly say that I don't think I've disagreed with anybody who's spoken here tonight. And I continue to search for better answers, but from a standpoint of the economic development and what we need and the devastating effect if the leadership of Oshkosh Corps were to leave and the corporation were to follow, from my standpoint with Aurora Healthcare, I just don't think that would be good at all. And I'm not speaking just for Aurora Healthcare in Oshkosh. I'm speaking for Aurora Healthcare in Wisconsin, because we're not competing just for Oshkosh Corps here. I truly believe we're competing for them to stay in Wisconsin.
I'm John Casper. I'm the president and CEO of the Oshkosh Chamber of Commerce. We're a member organization representing about 1,000 members, business members in Oshkosh, which employ about 28,000 people in Oshkosh. Usually when I come before a group like this, I'm usually speaking against the city on something. And I'm happy to say I'm finally very supportive of a proposal that the city of Oshkosh is advancing, carving out that 30 acres for Oshkosh Corp. I want to be very clear. Oshkosh Corp, this is about Oshkosh Corp. It's about Oshkosh Corp being retained in this community. Person before said there are other options. There are other options for Oshkosh Corp. Not one of them are in Oshkosh, other than this property. So if we're going to maintain this employer, a Fortune 500 employer in this community, we need to advance this. Losing Oshkosh Corp would be a body blow to this community. It would be a body blow that we would not be able to recover from for decades. Okay, there's 9 Fortune 500 companies in Wisconsin right now. Attracting a Fortune 500 headquartered company is not easy. It would take millions and millions of dollars to do that. Here we have an opportunity to keep something that is so synonymous with this community. Oshkosh Corp built this community, and this community built Oshkosh Corporation. We owe them this opportunity to advance this. Everybody in this room is supportive of Oshkosh Corporation. Here's this opportunity to do this. I think the plan that you have in front of us creates an opportunity for public access to a public park. It's got, River Walk. It has fishing opportunities. It's got bike trails. It's got the amenities that communities want. It has amenities that will be able to attract a workforce here. The gentleman on the Planning Commission talked about attraction of talent. Oshkosh Corp needs to have a facility that's reflective of a Fortune 500 organization. Okay, they can either do that here or they can go someplace where those people reside. I would like to see them do it here. Thank you.
John, I have a question for you. Thank you, number one. Number two, what what's happened to Kimberly Clark since they moved their corporate headquarters out of here? How many years ago down to Texas? Can you grab a mic for us?
I think over the years, production moves away. You're still going to have defense, Oshkosh defense, and production happening here in Oshkosh, but these corporate offices are gone, and those interests and those decision makers are elsewhere. Production slowly moves away. It's not going to happen overnight, but in a decade from now, 2 decades from now, we're going to see a erosion of investment from the community.
My name is Dan Carpenter. I live at 1804 Georgia Street. I've been active in city government all my life, Oshkosh Public Library Board for 10 years. The last 14 years on the Board of Zoning Appeals, so I keep active in what's going on in the city. I was born down the street down here on Fish Shanty. You know Fish Shanty, don't you? If you've lived in Oshkosh, you should know Fish Shanty. Mr. Wooler, my friend, would know it. We grew up together down there. I met a little girl on the west side. She came from Hog Island. You don't know where Hog Island is? That's Hog Island, right there. They raised pigs over there. So that's what it was named. She had a dad. Her father was a very great golfer out there. His name was Hank Felker. When he was a little boy, see those cricks up there? He used to rake those cricks for golf balls, so he could get enough during the Great Depression to take a little bit of money home to his mother so they didn't starve to death during the Depression, because his dad worked for the Payne Lumber Company that paid slave wages. Yeah, we've talked a lot about the history of the golf course. I think her dad's probably rolling over in his grave. But we haven't talked about the history of that land. That lake is called Lake of the Dead, Lake of the Mound of the Dead. There are people buried all around that lake. We know about the Great Massacre in 1730 when the French came through and slaughtered so many people up near Menasha. But there were many, many other times when they came through and killed a lot of people, and they're buried around there. We know some of the places, but we don't know all the places. But that's sacred ground. You want to take and put a 4-story office building on that sacred ground overlooking the Lake of the Mound of the Dead to Riverside Cemetery. I was in Riverside Cemetery this morning picking up some flowers from this family's places. I looked across to the golf course. I don't want to look across at a 4-story office building. It just doesn't make sense. If we could end up with the Dakota Pipeline all over here again. This is, the history of this land is great. It's not just the golf course. It's very, very valuable land, and we need to keep it the way it is. Thank you.
My name is Ken Keene, here on Court Oshkosh. Avid golfer. I love Lakeshore. I wish it would stay. I understand Oshkosh Corp. We want them to stay too. But I'm not happy with the concepts. And if you want to convince me more, I think you need concept 3 up there. Avid biker, runner, the whole works. I see no access to anybody to get near that water. You need a road around there so people can drive up, park their car, get out and go fishing. Right now, you're gonna have to walk a half a mile to get to any place to fish. I see a couple boat landings out there. I don't know who's gonna use those. You're about a quarter mile from the nearest street to even park on. You got another street going straight in. I'm not sure what the name of that one is, but it's a dead end. Why don't you bring that down to the lakefront and go left and go right so people can drive along the edge of the lake, still retain the walking path and stuff like I see. That's great. Maybe take that whole Oshkosh facility and shove that thing back about 50 yards or so and allow a road to go all the way around there for more access to people with cars, wheelchairs, bicyclists, walkers, to get more access up to that waterfront. Then I might be a little more convinced on this whole process. Thank you.
And I would encourage you to stay involved in this because this is going to come back to us for changes. This is all just conceptual, so thank you.
Barb Stieg, I live on Hubbard Street. Just a thought, that is a very pretty picture. But I'm thinking with all of those other sites that you said aren't acceptable, if you paint a pretty picture like that on those sites and show that to Oshkosh Truck, maybe they would be willing to look at those sites. They can still be on 41. You don't have to destroy the best golf course that we have in this area to do it. I don't want them to leave any more than anybody else does, but you don't have to do it that way. And I don't understand your time crunch that you say you have. I mean, if they're pushing that hard, are they really going to stay anyway? You got to be able to ask for more time.
Anyone else raise their hand?
Tom Carroll's 2725 Shorewood Drive. A lot, most of it on the other side. I believe the city needs more development like this. I believe the majority of people that have spoken business like this works. I've been born and raised in this city. I don't golf, I'll say that. I don't have anything against golfers. I've heard West Haven isn't doing so well. Maybe a part of this combination could be with the city. Of course, I know working with some of the people at Truck, I work with some of the engineers. I know what they want. I know where they want to live. I've heard about Oshkosh. They don't want to be anywhere. I haven't talked to them personally. I understand hearing different engineers speak. They got to be by the highway. In and out of Allegheny Airport. They don't want to drive through the city of Oshkosh. This works. I think it can work for everybody. I think the gentleman's name Terry had it right. Use that other 60, 70 acres and develop it properly, probably close. General feeling on here, Bill, you had a comment about all the people we lost. Tired of driving around it. On the highway, you see the landfill, and you see a prison. Go over by the lake. Some of the best property is by the Mental Institute. Like, we need development like this. People that are speaking against it should think of their grandchildren and think of what we need to keep this city a good city in the long run. We're excited about having right green space. I get it. I can appreciate how much they love that site. But I would think it's easier to duplicate that than to duplicate Oshkosh Corp.
Morgan Schultz, 151 Dawes Street. I just have a question. So I'm just a college student up here. I'm my super senior year, hooray. I golfed at Lakeshore. I've also golfed at West Haven and worked at West Haven previously. Has it been brought up in a proposal for a third concept to basically restrict Lakeshore to a 9-hole course? I know the value of an 18-hole course is far greater, but as far as compromise goes, I feel like that space could be utilized to serve both parties. Back in Milwaukee, I know where I used to golf for high school was a course called Lincoln, simple 9-hole course, and I know it would change the concept of how Lakeshore operates with how busy it would get, if the holes would stack up and tee times would be waiting for quite a while. But I feel like that would be a simple compromise to, benefit both sides here. Oshkosh Corp, obviously the plan would be modified, but I feel like you could easily fit 9 holes into that. Thank you.
Can somebody answer the question on 9 holes? We didn't task them to do that. We'll have to talk to staff about whether we come up with a concept 3 for a 9-hole course. So that'd have to be determined, and we'd probably want some direction from the council before we start making up, creating more concepts. Because we still have to decide if we're even putting in a proposal. Anyone else? Well, thank you. Everybody was very well-spoken and very civil. I appreciate your input. Plan Commission and Parks Board members, are there any other comments that you'd like to make before we adjourn for tonight? Oh, Mr. Tomes has something to say.
I just wanted to say, I mean, because I am a little bit concerned about the process, and so just to go on record, as a Planning Commission member, I would have voted for the change of land disposition to allow for this kind of development. Which concept right now for me is a little irrelevant, because that is going to be fluid and it is going to change with more input.
Mm-hmm.
But as far as using this particular land for a proposal to Oshkosh Truck, as a piece of the proposal to Oshkosh Truck, I would have been in favor for it. And it isn't something that I haven't thought about for several years, and that I've had conversations with when I was on the Long Range Finance Committee, and as far as what do we have, how can we generate more tax revenue, and what lands would be attractive for people to use, and how could we incorporate. Now, I don't look at this as losing a lot of parkland. I look at this as changing and using some of the golf course as for commercial development, and still have a considerable amount of parkland available to people that don't have access to it now. And so that's the way I look at it, that you have, I envision that open space up there where 21 is would be a highly popular area for people to go with the trail system and everything, and the access off 41, and then be able to get down, whether it be bike or whether it be walking, into the walking area that's 12 all the way down to Riverside Park, and even further on down. I look at that as being more usable space, and then the space over there by just adjacent to item number 6 there would also probably be a popular area for people to go, that again probably don't go there now because it's a golf course. And I've lived here 25 years, and I wouldn't think of going walking on a golf course simply because it's a golf course. It's not for public to go trampling on. I have more respect for that than going out and doing that. So this, to me, opens up more area, and that's why I would be in favor of doing it and having the mixed-use capability that we've talked about on the Planning Commission for years, and try to get to.
Alan, on it a little bit, I think what you're going to see, with that concept, you're talking about that lower area towards 21 and 40, you're going to see a change of people using it. The people who are currently using it are not going to be using that area. They're going to be forced to go probably to Lake Breeze and Winneconne to do their golfing. I would think, talking to the majority of the golfers, that's where they're going to head. They're going to head out of the city with their money to golf.
But doesn't that take that area that 1,000 people may enjoy and open it up to the 60,000 people that live here?
You're just going to change the people that do use it.
You're going to change the people that are using it, but it's going to be available to more people to use it rather than less.
Right. And more people could use it in the wintertime if they want, but they don't choose to.
Absolutely.
I have
Mr.
a
Miller.
question.
Oh.
Did anybody ask Oshkosh Corporation for more time so that we could go through the process and properly discuss this through the right channels?
Oh, yes.
And they just said no. Okay.
They gave us a deadline because they had a decision to make in November.
Okay.
Yes, Mr. Miller.
Jeff, I couldn't agree with you more. I just want to remind the audience too, this is conceptual. If this goes through, Jeff and his crew are going to decide what happens with the 35 acres and all of that stuff. But what happens with the park plan is we will hire a consultant, do a master park plan, and all of you will be able to have input into that. I can't emphasize this enough, that this is conceptual. This is not carved in stone, and we're going to want everybody's input. And the other thing I just want to remind both committees is we are going to get one more kick at the cat at this before it goes before council. They're not deciding on this until November.
Yes, Mr. Borsig.
Sort of an overarching, I want to echo what you had said. There's certain times when I feel really proud to be on the Plan Commission and serving the citizens of the community, and to listen to not only my fellow commission members and the Parks Board, but also the members of the community that have given such well thought out presentations and heartfelt. It really helps drive the decision-making process, and it actually makes it much easier, even though this is such a difficult question in the community.
Yes, sir.
I just have a question, is if there's any estimates as far as what it's going to cost to develop the 65 acres, as far as where the money's going to be coming from, and hopefully it's not coming from our comprehensive plan for the next 5 years that all the other parks are going to suffer for it.
I can't answer that directly right now. We will have engineers working on cost estimates for this development. I would expect we'll have those by the end of the month, because that's when we have to have this done.
You know, I know money right now in the city is very tight, and where's it going to come from?
Yes, and I'm sure that will be one of the top discussion items for council, and if this actually does go through, how that would be funded. Yes,
So
ma'am.
is Oshkosh Corporation willing to make a donation then to the city to aid with the redevelopment costs that would need to take place with this? Has that been discussed at all?
Good question. We haven't even gotten to the negotiation stage. They're still waiting for a proposal before we even get to the point of negotiating any kind of terms on the financial side. All right, well, thank you very much. And just to remind everybody, there's comment cards and a website and an open house for tomorrow night if you'd care to make additional comments to staff, and we'll get those to the city council. Thank you.